Well, welcome the first Wednesday in December, and so I really should say Merry Christmas. It is Christmas, if you can believe it. Okay, technically it's Christmas in 2020. Yeah, I know. Well, it's still Christmas. And at this time of the year, nothing actually demonstrates, better than this time of the year, nothing demonstrates the wonder of capitalism. I know that's not what you expected to hear, but it's actually true. Christmas, like no other time of the year, shows just how wonderful capitalism is. Free market capitalism is a modern marvel. It's an economic system that has historically shown tremendous consistency at generating wealth and opportunity for people to participate in that wealth. Opportunity, investment, prosperity, and success. It's a very unique system. In my opinion, of all the possible economic options, I still think capitalism is probably the best. It has the most potential for the common good. However, it is still a system that was birthed in this world, and therefore it acts an awful lot like the world, and so it has some downsides. First of all, in capitalism, there's not always a level playing field. Many people are left out of participation in the system and left out, because of that, of the opportunity. It could be remedied, but not very easily. Number two, related to that, the poor and marginalized are often forgotten and have limited opportunity and resources. And number three, and closely related to the other 2 points, is that those with the most seem to get more. I mean, think it takes money to make money. It's always been that way, hasn't it? So those with the most seem to get more, and now we refer to those folks now infamously as the 1%. Now, I don't oppose that, because the folks who take the risk and make the investments are people who provide jobs and opportunities for others to succeed. I think that's a necessary thing. You may say, well, the reward is disproportionate. Well, I get that, and maybe we'll talk a little bit more about that a little later. But I would always be in favor of people profiting from hard work, investment, and risk, but not at the expense of the greater good. I've never been a real fan of Robin Hood, or at least that system of the economy. I'm more of a fan of the Jesus way. So if you decide, well, I'd rather be socialist or some other, well, there are problems with all those systems, and capitalism as well. And yet here's the biggest downside. The biggest downside of capitalism is that you and I, everyday people, are viewed in this system as consumers. You might consider calling capitalism an economy of desire, because it's based on desires that are out of control. Everybody has desires, and when they run away from us, we're kind of controlled by those desires, and it causes us to be bigger and bigger consumers. And actually, that's exactly what drives capitalism: desire over need. In this system, for it to work at its best, it needs us. It needs consumers. We in the Western world have been well trained to be the ultimate consumers. And by our consumption, we are the drivers of the economy. When consumption increases, what happens? Well, the economy flourishes. Jobs are created. The job reports go up. There are more housing starts, and the quarterly reports look better. And why? It's because we are consuming. And when consumption decreases, like in the pandemic, the economy suffers. And so we need to print money and give it to the consumers, and we give it to all of them. Now, the thing is, many of you needed the stimulus checks, and you need another one because you're trying to pay bills, pay rent, make ends meet, and feed your family, and you are adversely affected by the pandemic, and so you needed that, and it's good to have that, and I'm glad. I wish they would do some more. But for many, it was simply what is called a stimulus check. And when you think about that, don't underestimate the real motivation. The stimulus check is designed to do what? To stimulate the economy, which is driven by what? Our consumption. So what's the problem with all that? For all the potential good and the realized good of capitalism, The downside is that it creates a nation filled with consumers, so consumed, so controlled by uncontrolled desire, so consumed with consuming that we become prisoners of our own desires. Yes, that was a borrowed line from Don Henley of the Eagles, Hotel California. I thought you might recognize that. But everything goes toward consumption when you are a prisoner of your desires. And then there's nothing left to contribute. There's nothing left to invest. There's nothing left to risk or to save or to give to anything or anyone but the system. They stab it with their steely knives, but they just can't kill the beast. Yes, another reference to Don Henley, and I think capitalism is exactly what he was talking about there. And what are the less fortunate, the marginalized, those who don't have what it takes to even be a consumer? Well, we can't help them. Why? Well, then we wouldn't have enough to consume all the things that we want to. And even honestly, they're just not pulling their weight in the system. And suddenly human beings are viewed as, well, their value is based on how much they can consume. And if they're not in a position to feed the beast, then they're not worth very much. And that's just really sad. God's economy is not like that. You want to do a good read on this, try James K. Smith's book called You Are What You Love. We have it in the bookstore. And whenever we open that up again, or you might ask a staff person to grab a copy for you. But in God's economy, it goes something like this. All that we have belongs to God. We are primarily stewards of what we have been entrusted with. And what we do with our finances should be guided by kingdom principles, not capitalist principles. We are really meant to be more than consumers. We're meant to be contributors. Jesus said, freely you have received, now freely give. Well, what do you mean? What do I give? Everything you've received. It's not just about finances, although that's a part of it. It's whatever God has given us, we are grateful for. We are stewards of it, and we are to be contributors somehow, some way, of the goodness that God has shown us in the world today. I mean, look at Jesus himself. Was he a consumer or was he a contributor? Well, everybody consumes what they need. But you look at Christ, I think you'd have to say overall he was what? A contributor. Was he Robin Hood? No, he was God, and he operated differently. Was he a hoarder? No, he was more of one who sacrificed for the sake of others. Well, he was just dumb. No, I actually think he was free, which is what I think most of us would really, really long to be, is free from these uncontrolled desires, and also free from debt, free from worry, free from being tied to this so strongly that we never contribute to anything or anyone except consumption. The only way to get there, the only way to break the power of consumption and greed is to simply give. I don't know any other way around it. Being generous breaks the cycle of consumerism. It breaks the cycle of greed. My family broke the cycle of consumerism by regularly giving to this local church, to tell you the truth. This is our family. This is our tribe. This is our refuge. This is an outpost of the kingdom of God. It's where we serve, where we live. And from here, when we contribute regularly to our tribe, our outpost of the kingdom, then we know those funds go wherever they are needed in the community. There's always this, always. Some of what we give is for infrastructure, with salaries for staff and leaders, and some of it goes to building, and upkeep, and utilities. But it also goes to impact ministries that we have that are here, near, and far, because we can do a lot more of that together than we can on our own. It's not only giving financially, but this commitment to your family, your church family, should be first. But the problem is consumerism. The solution is contributors. It's interesting, when we receive an offering on the weekends, and many of you give online, that's fine, I understand that, and I think it's a good thing. But we're not different people on the weekend when it's time to give or receive the offering. We're the same people as we are every other day of the week. And so we can bring, and we do bring actually, our consumerist tendencies to church with us. When we discuss finances, we can, as consumers, view this in different ways. Number one, giving to the church could be viewed as an obligation that I have fulfilled, or I don't fulfill it, or I fulfill it partially, but I fulfill it out of guilt with my teeth grinding together. I mean, there's no fun in that. When we discuss finances as a consumer, we can really go to this point and view it as, well, if I'm getting what I need, if me and my kids are getting what we need, then I will contribute. And it's kind of like you're purchasing something. But the church isn't Walmart. The church is the kingdom of God that we have been born into, and that we are a part of it. It's not shopping at Walmart. And I tell you the truth, you take that beyond money, and I have discovered that as soon as a real consumer is confronted or challenged, is not getting what they want, they will gladly go shop elsewhere at the new Target down the street. Well, I personally think people ought to stick around and grow up. This whole thing of stewardship is part of discipleship, and if that challenges and confronts people, well, I'm sorry, but so be it, because you'll never be free until you start letting God work in this part of your life. Thirdly, you might look at it when we talk about finances as well. It's the obedient thing to do, but I'm just never excited about it, but I will do it, and that's why you write your check for $13.43, and you get it right down to the exact whatever percentage you think you should be doing. But then there's another way. Why couldn't we look at it as simply being the joy of being generous? See, to me, that's when you start being free. Free from these uncontrolled desires, free from being a fuel for the machine of capitalism, free to be a cheerful giver, free to be a contributor who sees a bigger picture than just their own wants and desires, free to be a committed family member who might actually in their lifetime work themselves to a place where they are people who give sacrificially. Sacrificial giving is unheard of in the capitalist system. Now, some systems boast of being sacrificial, but it's really still the same way. It's always let's sacrifice the poor for the sake of a few. So those systems don't work either. But what about in the kingdom of God? This sacrificial thing, it's just unheard of outside of the kingdom of God. We give sacrificially in the world today. We want to know, where's our return? I mean, we want to profit from this. We just invest in something. We want to consume something, or we want to profit from it. And so, therefore, we don't really understand. I have heard plenty of folks in teaching on financial responsibility, and particularly generosity to supporting your local tribe and church, is that people say, well, if you give, you will be rewarded. And I want you to think about this for a second. What kind of appeal is that? What does it actually appeal to? It appeals to those uncontrolled desires that are already giving us problems. I mean, I've seen I've had the unfortunate experience of getting to watch a lot of television lately. And I see more and more people in church world making these weird promises that if you would just sow your seed, and you would do this and you would do that. And I understand probably better than ever why people would actually respond to some hokey thing like that. And it's because they're appealing to their base desires of uncontrolled desires of getting more. Now, there is a blessing in being a generous person, but I would never promise you anything. Jesus might. He says it this way, and I would limit it to this. He said, seek first the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added to you. What do you mean by that? In Matthew 6:33, he said that. And what he meant by that was this: listen, you just worry about this one thing in life. You live under the rule and reign of God, and he's watching out for you. Now, I want you to know that was not an ultimatum. That was not a, if you do this, I'll do that. It was more like this: since God is watching over you, you don't need to worry about things. In fact, put your attention on the kingdom of God. Seek first the kingdom. Let God and his kingdom principles guide you in your finances, because why? He's taking care of you. Now, if you're not under the rule and reign of God, you know what? Does God stop taking care of you? Not at all. Doesn't he take care of everybody? He takes care of everybody. Said in that same chapter that he watches over the birds and the flower. I mean, come on, he does all of that. So it's not an ultimatum: if you seek the kingdom, I will bless you. No, God is always blessing us, always taking care of us. But if we're not living under the rule and reign of God, we'll never know that we're being taken care of. We'll never know who's taking care of us. We'll always come back into our court with our uncontrolled desires and feel like we don't have enough and nobody's watching out for me, so I will watch out for me. What a trap. It's not dumb to become generous. It's liberating. This year in January, our board approved a deficit budget. Things have been tight the last couple of years, and you guys have come through year after year, and we've done just fine. This January, we have approved a deficit budget, with the idea that, man, more people are coming to church, things are doing better. By the end of 2020, we'll be in great shape and probably have a zero budget. That's what we're hoping for anyway, zero balanced budget. Excuse me. Well, that obviously didn't happen. And the good news is the money that was in the funds that were put us in a deficit for our budget, we actually didn't have to spend those funds this year because everything got canceled. And we sure had a lot of expenses, but we saved a lot too by not doing ministry. So we should have been able to end the year with a balanced budget. The problem is, with the pandemic and different people struggling and then other people disappearing, whatever, at the end of the year we find ourselves here still 25% off in our giving. And so here's simply what I would like to do. I want to just, if you're giving and you're a regular giver and you're one who believes in tithing or more, which I do, then thank you and keep doing it. I know it's kind of difficult because you maybe aren't even feeling safe enough to come back to church yet, but many of you have been really, really faithful to keep up your giving, and it hasn't gone unnoticed. Thank you very much. Continue to do that. If you're a person who's not accustomed to giving at all, I would say, why not try? Why not start? Start somewhere. Again, for me, it was giving to the local church. It's not that it's the only place you can give, but it was a built-in discipline for us, and it's never stopped since we actually became really disciplined to do it. But start somewhere, and if you're not a person who can do 10% or whatever, you've got to start somewhere and work your way towards that. But it's the regular discipline that will help you become free. If you've fallen and you can't get up, December is usually a time that some people like to try to catch up. So I would encourage you to do a catch-up offering, or maybe you get your bonuses in December. Do something. Start over again. Even just starting over again would be great. And then lastly, if you are just absolutely strapped and you need help, let us know. Financial or otherwise, but we're in the business of making disciples. That's what we do. That's what we are for, and this has always been a part of our disciple making process. And so we have folks who can help you to learn how to establish a budget, how to get out of debt. We're always offering that. We don't get nearly enough people taking us up on it. And yet I know there are a lot of consumers, even in our church, who are stuck. Why not make this a time that you do some changing, get some help? Well, it's been a crazy year. It's really shown our vulnerability to success or failure of the system. But it's also an opportunity for us to learn to trust, to change, to stop fueling the system and start fueling what God is doing in the world and doing whatever part we can. Well, thank you, and we'll see you again next First Wednesday. Have a good night.